Hey everyone, let's talk about the recent Bitcoin price dip, which is about 63,500, but has been as low as, 61 and 62 something in the last day or two. So, is anything wrong with Bitcoin? No, nothing's wrong with Bitcoin. It is a global asset that is used by a very small percentage of 8 billion people in the world. And as 8 billion people slowly figure out what this thing is, how it works, what they can use it for, it goes up and down. People's needs, purchasing needs go up and down, and people buy some, they sell some. One of the recurring themes is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which has been around since at least something like 2015, has a ton of Bitcoin in it that was bought way, way, way back, and has a bunch of Bitcoin in it that was bought by BlockFi, Voyager, Celsius, and FTX, and a bunch of companies that got super leveraged and blew up in 2022 due to bad management and leveraged stupidity, meaning they were borrowing with borrowed funds. Sorry, they were buying Bitcoin with borrowed funds. So a bunch of those blew up, and every time one of those has gone through bankruptcy, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, GBTC, has to sell the Bitcoin that is in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust in order to settle bankruptcy proceedings. So that keeps happening every week or two. There's one of those. I believe Genesis, one more bankruptcy from 2022, is going on right now. And so GBTC has been dumping vast quantities of Bitcoin on the market this week, which of course drives the price down because you have more selling activity than buying activity on a very short-term basis. So anyway, this is normal. Thankfully, post the approval of the Bitcoin ETFs, it has been much shallower than it used to be. So if this feels like a price dip, just be glad you're getting involved in Bitcoin in 2024 and not before now, because in the good old days of Bitcoin, this would not even register as a price dip because the upswings and downswings were far more radical than they are in today's modern Bitcoin world. So that being said, how should you handle a Bitcoin price dip? The answer is buy more Bitcoin. It's just not that hard. You buy more Bitcoin and you buy as much Bitcoin as you can possibly afford at that price. And if it goes down some more and you decide you can afford more at a lower price, well, you buy some more. So when I started accumulating Bitcoin way back in 2017, it was about $9,000 per coin. It was on the tail end of the 2017 bull market, and then Bitcoin went through a price correction, which it does, and I've talked about before, about every 4 years. So it ran up to a top in 2013, price corrected in 14, ran up to a top in 2017, price corrected in 2018, ran up to a top in 2021, price corrected in 2022. We are on the front end of that cycle now. I expect that will run through the end, through late second half of 2025. There will probably be a price correction in 2026 if the pattern keeps repeating. And that's due to the Gartner hype cycle that is talked about in the book, The Bullish Case for Bitcoin by Vijay Boyapati. So if you want to know why Bitcoin does this sort of 4-year cycle, read The Bullish Case for Bitcoin by Vijay Boyapati. You can get it on audiobook. You can get it on audible.com. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, anything you want. It'll explain that. But I started buying Bitcoin at 9,000 a coin. Of course, at the time I thought, if it dips, I'll buy more. Well, it did dip, and I bought a little more, but not a lot more. I was planning on buying a lot more, but I didn't because, of course, every time there's a price dip, the enthusiasm leaves the room. It goes from super exciting to buy Bitcoin because it's going up to not exciting at all to buy Bitcoin because it's going down. And so I did what virtually everyone does, which is as it went down, I was like, oh, well, maybe the party's over. Maybe it's not fun anymore. Maybe the world just decided to stop using Bitcoin. Maybe I was the last person who bought Bitcoin. And so the price after 9,000 a coin dipped, to somewhere in the $4,000 range. And at one point I thought, if it ever hits 4,500, I'll buy a lot more. Again, this was back in the day, back 2017, 2018, when the volatility was much higher, meaning the price swings high and low were much higher than they are today. Well, ultimately the price went under 4,500 a coin. So it went below half of what I had initially paid for it. And I thought, I had decided I was going to buy a lot of Bitcoin at 4,500 a coin. But it's no fun to buy Bitcoin when it's on sale because there's no enthusiasm. And maybe it's going away, and maybe I got on the tail end. So I did not. I think the cheapest I ever bought any Bitcoin was about $6,400. So $6,400 is the cheapest Bitcoin I ever bought, even though I had committed to myself I was going to buy a bunch of it if it ever went below $4,500, which it did on multiple occasions. And I did not buy more of it because psychology that's the way human psychology works. So Ultimately, I did load up on a ton more Bitcoin. I just ultimately loaded up on a ton more Bitcoin at prices significantly above 9,000 a coin, although obviously significantly below today's prices, even though the Bitcoin, the major purchase, I think the last major purchase I made was like 68,000 a coin. So obviously that one's underwater as of the last couple of weeks, but who cares? Because when Bitcoin's $500,000 per coin, nobody will care what price under $100,000 you paid for it. Also, the psychology is the same regardless. So over the years, I've talked to quite a few people that were involved very early in Bitcoin's life cycle. And in the very first bull market, which peaked in 2013 at $32 a coin, again, $32 a coin, now it's $64,000 per coin. So big difference between 32, not 32,000, literally $32 a coin. And it peaked at 32. And I've talked to people who've said, look, you know, I bought my first Bitcoin at $17 per coin. And I was like, wow, $17 per coin. I mean, $17 per coin is cheap compared to 64,000. I was like, what happened next? And they were like, well, it went down to $2 a coin. I was like, well, wow, 17 down to 2. What'd you do at $2 a coin? They were like, well, nobody wanted to buy it at $2 a coin because, you know, it's no fun to buy something that's on sale. The energy and enthusiasm has left the room. You're doubting your conviction. And so the people I've talked to are like, well, we didn't buy any because it was cheap. Now, obviously, somebody was buying Bitcoin at $2 per coin. Otherwise, the price would have bounced, you know, otherwise the price would have gone lower. So the floor was $2 a coin back in, I guess it was 2014. And the people I've talked to, or maybe it was 2012-ish. Anyway, it was right after the $32 bull run, and it went down to $2. So the people I've talked to, I was like, well, when did you ultimately buy a bunch of Bitcoin? And they were like, oh, but well, between $50 and $100 a coin. So think about this. They bought their first Bitcoin at $17 a coin. Then it went down to $2, but they didn't buy any. Then it went up past $17, where they could have bought a lot more but didn't. And ultimately, they bought a bunch of Bitcoin between $50 and $100 per coin back when it was clear to everybody that, hey, this was not going away and it's exciting and this is going to be the future monetary system of the world. So their buying pattern was very similar to my buying pattern, except there was multiple zeros knocked off. So they were, you know, the equivalent was buying Bitcoin at $9 and then it goes down to $2 and then they don't buy anymore and they buy a bunch more at $17 or, you know, $50 or whatever. So same pattern. And so part of the reason I post so much on Facebook is I'm hoping that many of you ultimately are smarter than I was and smarter than the earliest adopters of Bitcoin, and that you front load more of your purchases early in the Bitcoin price cycle. It seems to me that we are in the early stages of this price cycle, which should, you know, if history repeats, peak in the second half of 2025, next year, not this year, but next year. It appears we're in the very early stages of that. And if we are, the more front-loaded capital that is in now, the better. At some point in the later stages of this price cycle, when the price is, I don't know, 100,000 a coin, 150,000, $200,000 a coin, something like that, I will probably start recommending people dollar cost average, which means just buy a little bit every week or a little bit however often. But it just seems like we're so early in this price cycle and interest rates are so high, which means liquidity is at a low, and Bitcoin tends to do best when liquidity is at a high. So the Federal Reserve just signaled that they're going to start dropping interest rates again. So I look at the current prices and I'm like, if the prices are, you know, 63, 64, whatever, you know, any number that starts with a 60,000 anything a coin, and the Fed's about to drop interest rates, the Bitcoin halving, which is when the total issuance of new Bitcoin that's issued every 4 years, that drops in April, around April 15. So we're less than 30 days. We're like 3 weeks away from the halving when the price of new Bitcoin drops. GBTC, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, should be about to finally run out of this ridiculous bankruptcy leftover Bitcoin that they keep dumping on the market related to bankruptcies in 2022. And the halving's going to hit, the Fed's going to start lowering interest rates, which is going to make it even more appealing to buy Bitcoin because you will not be able to get 5.25% interest by just parking money in, you know, government securities. So the combination of the Fed starting to print a lot more money, which they will, the halving coming up around the middle of April, combined with the GBTC hopefully finally stopping dumping Bitcoin on the market. When you add all those things up, it just strikes me as a fantastic time to buy Bitcoin. And again, the last purchase I did was a six-figure purchase in the last probably 2 weeks at 68,000 a coin. So if you want to buy Bitcoin for significantly less than I paid for a six-figure purchase of Bitcoin at 68,000, you can do that right now. I don't know how much longer you can do that, but you can do that right now because right now the price is 63.5 or 64,000 or whatever it was right before I started. So all that to say, strikes me as a fantastic time to buy Bitcoin. I think all the stars are aligned for the bull market to continue, bull meaning up market, to continue in a very aggressive way for at least the next 18 months would be my prediction. And I think the price gets well into the six figures per Bitcoin. I don't know if that's 150, 180, 210, 240, 340,000. I don't know. It's going to be some number that right now seems ridiculous. And then it will go through a price correction. Also, as I've said before, I think when Bitcoin does go through a price correction, it will be to a dollar value that is higher than today's current price. So if anybody's thinking, oh, I'll just wait and buy it in the next big downswing, the next big downswing may not result in Bitcoin getting any cheaper than 90,000 a coin or 120,000 a coin. So it tends to be those that wait to buy lose out, and those that wait for the next big price dip lose out, and those who wait for a price dip usually lose out, and those that wait for a bigger price dip than the one they're in lose out. So if you want to accumulate Bitcoin, you got to do it the hard way, which is you got to pull the trigger. And that's the only way I bought a bunch of Bitcoin is I pulled the trigger when it was hard. I pulled the trigger when it was on sale. I learned my lesson from 2017 and 2018 when I missed out on a bunch of cheap Bitcoin. And so back when I was accumulating a lot of Bitcoin in 2021 and 2022 and or the first half especially, or really all of 2023, and even this year, I'm still accumulating Bitcoin. But in all of those cases, as soon as I had capital availability, I bought Bitcoin. And I am so thankful I did, because if I was still waiting around back in 2017, or sorry, not in 2017, in 2022, if I was still waiting around when Bitcoin was below 17,000 a coin, waiting for a little bit more of a dip, just a little bit more of a dip, then obviously I would not have bought a bunch of Bitcoin between $16,000 a coin and $17,000 a coin. And the money I front loaded into my Coinbase debit card was at the price of that when I bought the extra Bitcoin for my Coinbase debit card, I believe was at 16,450. So 16450, 16,450. I bought 18 months of business of living expenses. Or I should say 18 months of what I thought I would put on a debit card of living expenses. And anyway, so, everything I'm buying, I just bought gas, gas without, without the whatever ethanol in it. It was $4 a gallon. It cost $69 to fill up a Honda Pilot. $69 to fill up a Honda Pilot. But again, I'm paying for it with Bitcoin I bought for less than 17,000 a coin. And at the pump, it's, was $63,000 a coin. So, I guess that gas, whatever that math is, cost me $1 or $1.50 instead of $4. So anyway, I wish more people would have learned the lesson earlier, front loaded earlier. And I can promise all of the early people in Bitcoin wish that they had bought a ton of Bitcoin when it was way, way, way cheaper than now. So the day will come when you, like everyone else, will think, dang, I really, really, really wish I had bought a bunch of Bitcoin at $63,400 or $500 or whatever. And if you're like everyone else, you'll probably accumulate most of your Bitcoin at a much higher price than today, because the psychology of it is just, that seems to be what humans do. Hopefully you'll be, outsmart the standard human psychology, which would result in accumulating a lot more Bitcoin at a lot cheaper prices. So, happy to help. Hopefully my Bitcoin sort of dip tutorial is helpful, and I would anticipate it starts the next epic run any minute now. But who knows? Could be days, could be weeks, could be months. Nobody knows. Nobody can time the market. And the smartest Bitcoin person in the entire world, other than maybe Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor himself, is Michael Saylor. And he bought over the last weekend, more than $600 million of Bitcoin at more than $68,000 a coin. So if he's not smart enough to time the market with $600 million to buy Bitcoin, and his company, MicroStrategy, now owns more than 1% of all of the Bitcoin that will ever exist in the world. If he's not smart enough to time the market, I'm not, you're not, and nobody is, which means you just got to buy Bitcoin. It's that simple. You just got to pull the trigger and buy it. I know it's painful. I know it's scary. I wish I had bought way more when it was way lower prices than today, but the psychology of it is the psychology of it, and I've got the same thought process on how I buy things as everybody else does, and it's scary to front load, but however much you front load, that's the benefit you get later on. So hopefully this is helpful. Hit me up with any questions or comments in the comments. Happy to take a stab at them at anything anyone has. So y'all have a great day and a wonderful weekend. Much appreciated. Thanks.